Today want to talk about the 2025 to 2027 identity recalibration era. So this is the 2025 to 2027 identity recalibration era. What's collapsing, what's emerging, and how to navigate it with integrity. So, why this moment really matters now, the 2025 to 2027 identity recalibration era, what's collapsing, what's emerging, and how to navigate it with integrity. This matters now because we are not entering into a new trend cycle. We are exiting an era and a new one is beginning. 2025 really represents to 2027 a collective identity recalibration. It's not just about personal reinvention or what we all have going on individually. There's something happening on a much larger scale collectively. So many people right now, especially women, are feeling anxious, restless, and really lacking clarity, and they're not really sure why. But that discomfort is a signal that's telling us something. And historically, identity recalibration always follows any institutional breakdowns that we're seeing happening rapidly, trust erosion with our government. Politics, education, so many systems that are collapsing and overperformance of false selves that we've all been conditioned to show up as literally for our survival. So, this isn't about finding yourself. It's really about shedding identities that no longer survive this reality. So many of our identities were built for a world and a system that simply do not exist anymore. So, what I mean by identity and what I don't mean. So, identity is not just personality, like branding, aesthetics. It's not how we look, although identity in luxury and identity consumerism is a thing. We'll talk about that as well. Identity is really the operating system through which we make meaning, how we relate ourselves to the world, how we see ourselves showing up in this reality. So, how we measure our worth, how we relate to power, how we decide what matters to us. And for decades, our identity was always outsourced to achievement, productivity, visibility, and affiliations through brands, politics, and institutions. And that model worked until it didn't. And we're seeing the fallout now of a system that is no longer working. And a large piece of what's happening is that we're waking up. There's a disconnect and a dissonance between what we're feeling on the inside, who we really are, our true identities, and realizing that there's been a lot of conditioning to fit into the systems that really were never created for us to thrive within. And so now that that model is no longer working, this current collapse is not a moral failure. So many people see it as like a personal failure. I know I did for a while, and it was like, what's wrong with me? What's happening? What am I missing? But this is happening collectively. It's happening to us on a human level. And what it boils down to is a systematic mismatch. So, the key distinction here is identity answers who I am in the world, who am I in the world, and integrity answers who am I when no one is watching. And sometimes we realize that there's a disconnect between the two, and it's not your fault or anything that you did wrong. It's really about our system, how we've been designed to operate within it so that it functions. And now that it's collapsing, that disconnect, that dissonance is becoming more clear because they're not matching anymore. So, what's collapsing from 2016 to 2024? That was what I see as like the warning phase. And these are endings that you guys are already sensing. We're all already feeling it. Performance identity is one of the things that's collapsing. This really was thriving all ways, but really between 2016 and 2024. Performance identity, where worth was tied to output, how things looked, optics, and external validation, celebrity worship, and aspirational things that we used to look up to. Those are crumbling and dismantling. Hustling as a virtue, we're tired. We want to work. Most of us like work, but we want to do work that feels good to us, and we don't want to hustle for our survival, our basic needs. Institutional credibility is collapsing, and this includes media, religion, politics, corporations, and the fantasy that success guarantees our safety. We're realizing now that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how successful you are, it doesn't matter how much you achieve, that your safety is not necessarily guaranteed in this system. That is an illusion that is crumbling. And so there's also a belief that visibility equals power. The more that I'm seen and the more that people externally validate me, that means that I have more power. It doesn't really matter what I have within or what's going on behind the scenes, as long as I have power through visibility. We're seeing all of that crumbling. So I think it's really important to note as well that these identities are dying because they are energetically unsustainable. And it's not, again, because we failed as a people. It's simply a system that is no longer working. And so I think this feels really personal, and there's a psychological layer here that we have to address and really normalize the grief, confusion, and maybe some of the defensiveness that we may all be feeling. And I think it feels really personal because when identity collapses, the nervous system reacts first, our body. If you've read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, I've mentioned it before, but you really feel it in your body, in your soul, in your spirit, that something isn't quite right. And our bodies know before our minds really register what it is that we're sensing. So, anxiety, irritability, grief, boredom, and existential questioning are really common in this phase of wondering, like, what is really happening? And I think people often respond by clinging harder to maybe labels or titles that they once held that made them feel that sense of security or safety. You may even consume a new identity. If I associate with this person, this group, this thing, then I will recreate that feeling of safety that I'm searching for. We can even start policing other people's beliefs and really doubling down on what it is that we believe and what we stand for. And we may even find ourselves joining rigid communities where things are very clearly outlined. This is who you are, this is how you operate, and that means that you're doing something right. Religion is one of those things for many people, and it's not necessarily creating the true safety that you get on a soul level when you have safety from within. So, this is where identity consumerism really rises and why discernment matters now more than ever. You have to know who you are on the inside at a core level outside of anything else and who else is telling you who to be. My work, I want to be very clear, is designed to help you understand who you already are. It's just a mirror reflecting back to you who it is that you are, what your beliefs are, not telling you who to be. You get to decide who you want to be outside of conditioning and inherited identities, outside of your family and their expectations, society's expectations, what wherever it is that you live, what they expect of you, whether it's religion or education, whatever that is, who are you outside of all of that? Okay. So anyone that's telling you who to be, that is where we fall into that identity consumerism. And there's a really interesting post on my Instagram about this if you're interested in diving into it and seeing some examples as well. At Tiffany Lauren Jones is my handle there. It's really outlining what happens when brands really start taking advantage of the fact that a lot of us are lacking identity. And it's not because we don't have one. We just haven't had the opportunity to really uncover and discover what our true identity is outside of all of the conditioning and the systems that we've existed within. And I think that the most dangerous voices in this new era that we're moving into are going to be the ones who are telling you who to be by consuming their identity that they're putting onto you. Now, you can always choose what you feel works best for you, but it can be predatory. And if you are someone who is not spiritually grounded yet, this is the time to start going within and really understanding who am I outside of all of these external influences? And it's not something that's necessarily easy to do, but it's very important so that people aren't taking advantage of you. Because I do think we're going to see a rise in, as I mentioned, rigid communities, cults, and really groups that are telling you who you're supposed to be, and that if you're not this version, that something is wrong. And I don't necessarily agree with that. The identity marketplace, this is something that we've been talking about as well. And why it's really exploding right now is because I think when inherited identities dissolve, people are going to shop. We have brands, ideologies, influencers, and movements step in to offer more belonging, more clarity, more superiority, and a ready made self. This creates aesthetic identities like the clean girl aesthetic that there's a lot of people falling into that or really seeing that as their true identity rather than I enjoy this product. It means something if I show up as this person. It means something if I have this look. Spiritual identities, political identities, and as I mentioned, wellness identities. So some offer genuine community, but others function kind of like soft cults. So you have to be very careful and very discerning as what it is that you're entering into. We're all really craving community and a sense of belonging. And there are people that are going to prey on that and say, hey, we have community here. Here are the guidelines of who you have to be in order to fit into this community. And I think that that is unhealthy. Unless it feels amazing to you and you love it there, then you go for it. But I think community rooted in sovereignty versus community rooted in dependency, depending on what this community says, what these guidelines are, versus a community that's really telling you to be yourself, nurturing you, helping you to harness and sharpen your skills like critical thinking so that you can decide for yourself what feels good and what feels best for you. That's going to be the critical distinction. So check in with yourself. Your body, your intuition is really going to be key in discerning what's good, what's healthy for you in this next era. So what's emerging instead, and this is the recalibration that happens, we are becoming self-selective. And what that means is that sovereignty doesn't necessarily mean isolation. It means that we are choosing affiliation consciously. We are holding belief without being dominated by that belief. And we're leading ourselves from within without being coerced to do so. So identity is moving from performance to coherence, and power is shifting from visibility to more discernment. Leadership is becoming quieter, slower, and more embodied. So this is where we really start seeing the patterns between our old identities and our new identities, and really what's the gap between as we're all learning to embody this new era that we're shifting into. So how do you navigate 2025 to 2027 without losing yourself? I think that it's important to slow down your identity decisions. This is the communities that you're joining, what you affiliate with, and how you identify yourself in the world, who you say you are, and what you say you stand for. Really watch who is rushing you into certainty and pay attention to nervous system signals. Pay attention to what your body is telling you. If your shoulders get tight, if you start getting those butterflies in your stomach, or there's something in the back of your mind that says, I don't think this is right. Just pause with that. Sometimes we have fear and anxiety coming up because it's something new. And other times our body is trying to warn us. So it's important to discern between the two. And you get to decide what that is. And the best way to do that is to make slow decisions. Wait and see, is this a feeling that I keep having? Or was it just a fleeting moment? Ask better questions. Who benefits if I adopt this identity? Am I benefiting from adopting this identity, or am I adopting an identity that supports this system, this person, this community more than it really benefits me? What part of me feels relieved here, and what feels constrained? Do I feel like I have to shrink and conform and contort and really only be one version of myself here? Or do I feel expanded? Do I feel relieved? Do I feel safe to be myself, to show up as me? Something that I always think of when I'm questioning if I'm feeling constrained or relieved, I think of the little version of me. I literally have a picture of her in my mind and I see her and I see whether or not she would be comfortable in that space or be comfortable with the decision that I'm making. And if I feel like she's uncomfortable or she doesn't necessarily feel safe, I have a conversation with my inner child. And if she doesn't want to do it, I don't force her to do anything that she doesn't want to do. I listen to her. And this is really important, especially those of you who felt like you didn't have a voice maybe growing up or throughout your lifetime. You think about the little version of you and listening to them, listening to her, listening to him is really important and always, I believe, going to guide you in the right direction. Because even though you may be an adult version of yourself, you're still connected to your inner child, your inner self. And that is when we had intuition before the world told us who to be. Our little selves knew, okay? They could feel what it is that we needed to see. So resist urgency. Any identity formed under pressure rarely lasts and will have you feeling like lost and spiritually ungrounded out here. So anything you build within is lasting. Start with yourself, how you feel and what you feel is best. So you don't have to create a whole new self. You just have to build a truer relationship with the one that's emerging as you remove these layers of conditioning. I think that what we're doing here is really important because it's not therapy. It's not a doctrine that you are needing to abide by. It's not telling you who to be. It's really cultural literacy and self inquiry. And the goal isn't to just undergo transformation just for the sake of it. It's really to position you to have choice with awareness. It's all guided by you. I spent years following paths that were not designed for me because I thought that that was the only way to succeed, the only way to survival. You go to school, you get an education, you get the amazing job, you maybe find the right partner, you get the house, and you have all this that's supposed to give you your stability, right? You go to work, you save, you invest, and then you just do that for the rest of your life. And that was not working for me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a traditional path. I want to be very clear about that. But I do think that there's something to be said about designing your own path that works for you and listening to your body when it's telling you that something isn't necessarily right for you. And that's okay. So that's what I mean by having choice with awareness and making sure that the choices that are being made and presented to you, you're choosing that from a place of awareness, not just changing because someone else is telling you that you need to change. Okay. If you feel confused, this is not a sign of failure. It's typically a sign of what happens when you're in transition, when you're shifting identities from who you used to be and who you're becoming. And I find for myself personally, if I'm lacking clarity, there's typically something, an emotion that I need to process within me. There's a memory or an experience, a belief a fear or a doubt, something that I haven't really addressed within myself that is causing confusion within me. And I think that when you address what it is that's happening with you internally, that's where your clarity comes in. And emotion is really the key. Understanding the feeling, being honest with yourself about how you truly feel and not forcing yourself to ignore your feelings. That's kind of what we've been trained to do at a survival. You know, we've had to bypass feelings, bypass emotion, and prioritize logic for survival. And so, for many of us, actually feeling our feelings is a luxury. And being able to understand our emotion and how our emotion drives our decision making and therefore what we see in our reality. So, if you're feeling confused, it's not that you're failing. Don't spend your time, if you can, really harping on that or beating yourself up. Allow yourself to sit with your emotion. And one of the best ways for me to do this, especially as an easy starting point, is just to write. Even if you don't know what you want to write, just get a pen, a piece of paper, and just start writing and see what comes out. Some call this scripting, some call it channeling, some call it journaling. See what comes up and see if you even feel resistance about being honest with yourself. I know that's something that I've experienced. I've felt bad for sharing my own feelings in my journal. I felt guilty for expressing myself that way and didn't allow myself to fully be vulnerable with how I really felt and what it is that I was experiencing. And that blocked me in so many ways in my life because I wasn't able to make choices from a place of awareness of what feels good for me. It was more so, this is the identity that I feel I should have. And who do I need to be to align with that? And as I embarked on my own path, that didn't work for me. It all kind of crumbled around me because it wasn't truly aligned. It wasn't truly what my mind, my body, and my spirit were telling me, and what was best for me. And so someone commented on my YouTube channel, they said, I wish I had intuition. I think we all have intuition. It's just maybe covered and buried under some things. So the work that is available for you to do if you're on this journey and you're feeling called to understand what's next for you is to start practicing listening to your intuition, tap into your body. Feel when you are presented with certain information, how it feels. Do you feel resistance? Do you feel skeptical? And then stay curious with yourself. Why do I feel this way? What is my body telling me? And that is truly self-discovery, is always asking yourself why, checking in and using the signals that your body is sending you as data to not only inform your decisions, but to also understand yourself on a much deeper level. And so I think that anyone who's feeling this right now is really early in this next era that we are entering into. And I think that this next era is really going to belong to those who can sit inside that uncertainty without outsourcing themselves. And this is your invitation to, again, observe. You don't have to really do anything. Just you can observe yourself, and your integrity is going to outlast any identity trends that are coming up in this next era. So, some questions to leave you with, if you need a starting place for your journaling, is what are you noticing that's dissolving in your own life right now? What are you noticing that's dissolving in your own life right now? Where do you feel pressure to be someone that you no longer relate to or recognize? These can be roles, again, or inherited identities. And it doesn't have to always be school. It can be an outdated mother role or a daughter role or father, sister, brother, friend, relationship, school. So many roles that maybe you played because you thought you had to, or you were doing it in a way that wasn't fully authentic to you or felt good to you. So, where do you feel pressure to be someone that you no longer recognize? And lastly, what does sovereignty mean to you? Not as a concept or an idea, but really as a felt experience. What would it feel like for you to be emotionally sovereign, to honor how it is that you feel, how it is that your body is telling you to pay attention to the signals that are maybe coming up for you? So, what does sovereignty mean to you, not as an idea, but as a felt experience? So, I'll leave you with that today. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you in the next video.